Hello and welcome to another one of our Saturday Spotlight interviews. My name is Anna Amelia and I'm from North East Animal Rights. And today we are delighted to welcome Mel Broughton, who has been an animal rights activist since the early 1980s. So welcome and thank you very much for agreeing to do this.
No problem. Thank you very much for inviting me.
You're most welcome. So first of all, could you tell us about your vegan journey and also a bit about your life as an animal rights activist, please?
Well, let's deal with my vegan journey. My vegan journey isn't a journey as such, because I became an animal rights activist in the very early 1980s and I was already a vegetarian. So like many people in that era, veganism wasn't what it is now. It wasn't the preeminent issue by a long way. So I would say in terms of my vegan journey, that was something that came quite quickly once I got involved in animal rights, because obviously veganism is something that you adopt because it's consistent with your animal rights philosophy and your animal rights views. But I'll reiterate that, and I always say this: I'm not a vegan activist. I'm an animal rights activist. I'm vegan because I'm an animal rights activist, not the other way around.
Yeah.
My involvement with animal rights, or my journey with animal rights, is one that I would say goes back to being a small child. So even when I was very, very small, I was always appalled by cruelty and injustice. Absolutely hated it. And as I grew up, those feelings just got stronger and stronger. And it was once I started to look at what's happening with animals that animal rights really came home to me. But in terms of what animal rights was, I mean, obviously I didn't understand as a young child what animal rights meant. I just knew that I hated cruelty and I just knew I hated injustice. But it was actually a Saturday in my hometown, Northampton, when I took a leaflet off a lady in the town centre, and it was a leaflet about vivisection. And that was the thing that, if you like, turn the light on. I mean, the light, if you like, the light was already there, but that turned it on. And it was that leaflet really that I suddenly realised this is it. It was a thing that I've always been waiting for, that something to connect with, that all those years as a child growing up and thinking about these things and being upset by cruelty and injustice. And all of a sudden I had it all came. There was a purpose here. And I remember going straight back to this person and saying, like, when's the next meeting? And that was it. There was no going back for me. I'd found the place I was meant to be. And nothing has, in that sense, nothing has changed since then.
Yeah. It's interesting you're talking about taking a leaflet off a stall, because we're often told that handing out leaflets at a stall is pointless. But actually that's what turned me vegan from vegetarian, because I was handed a leaflet about dairy and then I went home to watch some footage about dairy as well. So we are always kind of conscious of, when we hand leaflets out to people, that they could be at the start of the journey, but actually they could be at the end of their journey when they literally take the leaflet and they make that decision to be vegan and then to go into animal rights as well.
Yeah, and I mean, that's true now. As I say, I mean, I think the thing that's different, I think, then was that the predominant issue with the emerging animal rights movement wasn't veganism.
Yeah.
It was animal experimentation.
Yeah.
And I was a vegetarian already, but veganism wasn't the thing that drove me at all.
Yeah.
It was actually animal experimentation. Veganism followed after I got arrested at an anti-vivisection demonstration in Cambridge. And I ended up in the cells with a guy who was vegan, and we were chatting while we were waiting to be processed. And he spoke to me about being vegan, and I kind of thought, yeah, I thought straight away. And I came out out the cells that day, and I went vegan straight away. But I've got to be honest, veganism was never the driver for me. It never was. I totally saw the logic of it. It makes perfect sense. If you're going to be a consistent animal rights advocate, you need to be vegan. But it was never the thing that drove me. It never was. And in many ways, it still isn't. It's the animal rights issue that drives me, not the vegan issue. Yeah. And I know that may sound counterintuitive to a lot of people who are going to listen to this, but I come from a different background as far as animal rights movement goes. To me, it was animal rights that was a driver. It was about changing the way society views animals in terms of their legal their kind of legal status, but also the fact that when I came face to face with for the first time the realities of animal abuse, particularly in laboratories. It horrified me that on such a deep level. And I think that's the thing about vivisection, above all else, is it's such a calculated way of causing suffering to a non-human in a way that I don't think anything else is. All animal suffering is abhorrent, and I'm appalled by everything that happens at slaughterhouses and factory farms. I really am. But there was something different about vivisection. The calculated, planned nature of the suffering and the time and the periods for which it could go on that really struck something deep down in me, and it still does to this day. Although, like I said, I've been a vegan for 40 years, and you know, I totally understand why you should be vegan, and I'm totally on board with that. But it's never been my driver, and I know people may find that a bit strange, but it actually still isn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that obviously you talk about veganism and animal rights, sort of, you know, covering a wide spectrum of issues, and your focus is on vivisection. But I know that obviously you do a lot of work with hunt monitoring and hunt sabs, and we know obviously some of us obviously have been watching sort of social media and realize, and you know, and you've been injured again, and we're also very concerned. You know, last year when you were injured, you were really horrifically put in hospital. So are you able to talk about those a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, for legal reasons, I've got to be a bit careful. What I can say is that in the first case, the incident where over a year ago now, where I was received a large number of broken bones, that case is now hopefully progressing. I won't say anything more than that, but I have had news this week, actually, in the last few days concerning that. I won't go into any more because it's still at a very important stage, but it is actually progressing. After a year of waiting, it is now. There are now signs it is progressing. The assault last Saturday again is now in the hands of the police. I received 2 more broken ribs after an assault by a hunt steward. Hunt violence, right? Okay. I don't want to make it just about me, because I think it's important here that, you know, my colleagues who I sub with suffer equally. They get attacked week in and week out. Unfortunately, you know, we kind of have got used to it, but that's not a particularly great thing to have to say, that you get used to being shoved around and attacked. But in the case of the Cottesmore Hunt, who we've been doing now for 4 seasons, they do have these stewards who are basically hired thugs who come along to deal with us. They're not necessarily interested in hunting. What they are interested in is violence against saboteurs and monitors. And as a consequence, the more effective we are, the worse that often gets. But it's something that's levelled against all of us, not just me. It's just that I've come off worse recently. But I could, you know, my colleagues also suffer weekly, are assaulted, pushed around, thrown around, you know, and attacked. So, but I think it's something that, whilst it's disturbing and not pleasant to deal with, it kind of shows the reality of the situation we're in with this issue. Hunting is essentially illegal, although we know that the Hunting Act of 2004 is full of loopholes. But still, hunts, as far as they're concerned, seem to think that you know, the laws that do exist don't apply, or as we're now seeing with the court cases going on at the moment with regard to the smoke screen, that they can basically get away with presenting an image of themselves, whereby they believe they're seen to be doing things legally, when in fact any hunt saboteur across the country will tell you week in and week out that these laws are flouted and foxes are hunted and killed. And unfortunately, and all too often, the police seem powerless or unwilling to act, which is a situation that makes, you know, life difficult. But I think, especially in an age of social media, I think what the hunt saboteurs have done very, very successfully is use that platform to show the public exactly what is going on, you know, with constant films and images of foxes being hunted, attacks on hunt saboteurs. And I mean, you know, it's always been the case, and it still is, that the vast majority of the British public are against hunting.
Yeah.
So I think as saboteurs and hunt monitors, you know, the job is to go out there and represent that majority opinion. You know, these people have got to be stopped. They have to be stopped. In the first instance, you go out as a hunt saboteur to save an individual's life, and that's always going to be probably the first role. But I think now more than ever, our role is also to highlight and to enforce the law, and also to provide the evidence for these laws to be tightened up, and ultimately for these hunts to be shut down. Because at the end of the day, I don't think any of us are going to be satisfied until, you know, they are shut down. Because quite clearly, trout hunting is a myth. It's being used to cover up hunting. Everybody knows it. The politicians know it. The public know it. The hunt know it. And at some point, someone's going to have to say, game up, time, you know, it's over. And I think our role now is to, one, save lives, but also now probably almost as important is to create the situation through being out there where we can finally draw a line into this. Because if you think about all the kind of forms of animal abuse that are going on out there, the number of animals killed by hunts may be relatively small, but in terms of what they're actually doing, in other words, you know, creating or making a sport out of terrorizing animals, it's, you know, it's the least defensible. And I think that as a movement, we need to recognize that until we get rid of this, everything else kind of is very difficult for us. Because if we can't deal with this, how are we going to deal with vivisection? How are we going to deal with the meat industry? If we can't get rid of this least defensible one of all. So to me, politically, it matters, as well as obviously for individual animals. Politically, it matters a lot.
Well, we've got, you know, we've got two really good groups up here. We have Northumberland Hunt Watch and North East Hunt Monitors, and when we sort of, you know, we supported, we did a protest last week. We supported theirs against AXA insurance, because obviously AXA insurance are sort of underwriting claims and things from the hunt, and people who we were stopping and giving leaflets to were saying, oh, but fox hunting's illegal now, you know, so nobody can do it. And we're like, it really is still going on. It really is. You know, it's been illegal for so many years, but it's still going on. You know, and this is what I think, this is why you're saying obviously social media is really, really good, because you can get the messages out there, you can get the photographs, you can get the videos and everything out there. And unfortunately, obviously what happened to you, it's not an isolated incident. You know, I know obviously sort of the people who I work with as well, they've all had similar issues with, you know, the thuggery and the savagery and the, you know, you know, and it is, you're right, what it is about, that sort of the number of foxes killed are relatively small in terms of, you know, factory farmed animals, but it's about the intent, isn't it? It's about the intent to deliberately cause, you know, suffering for entertainment, and that's what the public is against, really, isn't it?
That's exactly it. And I think if we can deal with that issue, then, you know, it's like with circuses and everything else, where you have these issues where animals are using entertainment or whatever, that they're kind of the first, if you like, the kind of touchstone issues in a way. Because once you deal with those and you say to people, look, you know, it's not right, it surely isn't right, and people recognise that, to use animals, you know, to provide entertainment or a sport, then, you know, if it's wrong to do that, then you then go on to ask bigger questions about what happens to other animals, you know. And I think the hunting thing, I think, is a particularly, it's like an itch that you're trying to scratch all the time and it won't go away. And we have to deal with it, you know, we have to. And I think that also, in terms of the animal rights movement, historically, the base of the animal rights movement, certainly the grassroots activists, and if you like, the direct action wing of the animal rights movement, it was, you know, it was the hunt saboteurs that basically underpin that. And so that the hunt saboteurs movement is very important in the history of the animal rights movement, for lots of reasons. And I think it's proven that it still is at this stage, you know. And what I would like to see, the hunting issue dealt with also, because it would unlock an awful lot of people hopefully move into other areas of campaigning and bring that expertise in. And I think that will be, you know, a really good thing for us all. So
we have our group and some other groups as well have been campaigning over the years in our borough to stop a camel parade every Christmas comes along, and they had camels parading down our high street. And we successfully managed just this year, after nearly 7 years of campaigning, to get it stopped. But as a result of that, I'm now working on a paper for the council to look at other areas of animal protection. So things like licensing for different areas where animals are getting hurt or getting exploited. So you're right, it kind of does open up that sort of people look at something and like a one issue and realise that the lines are quite blurred between that animal being exploited and then another one being exploited. So where do they stop? So it has opened up quite a big opportunity for us in this area, to try and get this sort of thing. I mean, it's going to take a number of years. I mean, it's still going to take a lot of education, but it is, like you said, opening up doors, because we worked on this camel parade, because this was something which was happening on our doorstep, and people were saying that animals aren't being abused, but they are being exploited. That was our point, Anyway, so going on to the MBR Beagles, because obviously we are all watching. I mean, our group are watching this avidly every single day. We're kind of like checking in with Camp Beagle and find out what's going on. And we know today it's been horrendous because they have taken some puppies away. So how did you become aware of what was going on? And can you tell us a bit more about the campaign group and what they hope to achieve, not just for the Beagles, and obviously it's a wider issue for the vivisection?
Well, Camp Beagle, I've been involved with the campaign at MBR for 2 years now. So before Camp Beagle existed, there were a small group of us who were holding regular protests outside MBR, 2 years ago, and also at Covance, which is now Labcorp, formerly HLS, down the road. So the group of us had already been there for quite a while. A small group of us, probably 5 or 6 or 7 of us every week, or we'd be outside. And the thing that changed it really was the getting the undercover footage of the MBR acres into the Daily Mirror. I mean, that changed everything. So from being a very small number of us, it suddenly exploded. And the Camp Beagle actually came out of a demonstration we had on the Sunday following the Mirror expose, which was on the Tuesday. And we got a group there on the Sunday. And what happened was, I think in the end we got about 50 people there at MBR. And then at the end of the demo, there was a couple of women there who said, well, actually, we're not going to go home. And they slept in their cars at night over there. And then other people started turning up. So Free the MBR Beagles, which is a campaign that was already existed, we then had this situation where people were suddenly turning up and they started bringing tents and pitching up by the side of the road. So this kind of organic thing happened, and it became Camp Beagle. And the success of Camp Beagle, I think, can be measured by, despite the terrible scenes today again of the 2 vans going out, it is worth remembering that, for over 40 days when Camp Beagle first set up, no dogs left that MBR. And in fact, only 3 shipments have left since it started. So we're talking about, I don't know how many weeks now, 7, 8, even more weeks, whatever it is, 10 now, maybe 12, I don't know what it is now. And although 3 shipments is bad, ordinarily it would have been a lot more than that. But it's worth remembering that. I mean, I'm absolutely gutted. I was at Camp Beagle yesterday and the day before. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there today. My dad's in hospital and I couldn't get there today. But I got a phone call straight away to say that the police had suddenly arrived en masse, which did usually signal the arrival of the vans. And I knew what was going to follow, and I was absolutely gutted, absolutely. But I think in terms of, I think what's important to remember, when I came out of prison and came off licence in 2018, and vivisection was hardly being talked about by this movement at all. It become an issue that got literally kicked into the long grass. And I think I was very, very aware of that. And a few other people were as well. And I think one of the things that has happened, that Camp Beagle has done, and it's done it in a way that nothing else has, is completely put laboratory animals right back in the spotlight again, the animal rights movement. And despite the tragedy of today, and it is because those little beagle puppies have gone off today and they will now be in a lab waiting to die. And there's no way you can dress that up, But it was going on. Let's not forget, before Camp Beagle started and before we started the protests there, those dogs were going in and out quietly out of MBR because of the last, since 2017 when MBR took over from Harlan. So that was quietly going on anyway, but not anymore. Not anymore is it quietly going on. And despite the tragedy of those dogs going, what Camp Beagle has done, what Free the MBR Beagles has done, has now put it not only on the national map, but it's international now. And also, I don't know if hopefully people have seen today the Daily Mirror online from Free the MBR Beagles again. So this isn't going back in the box now. It's not going back in the box. And I think that's the thing that has been incredible about this. The amount of support that this campaign and the camp is getting now is just, I haven't seen the like of it probably since the 90s, Shaq and and everything else. Hasn't happened, but now it's happening again. And for an issue, that had literally been pushed aside, I think that's probably one of the biggest successes. But I'm confident that we will win this ultimately. I mean, we're all going to the Home Office again tomorrow for another demo, and the momentum's there now. The momentum's there. MBR are not going to be allowed to slip quietly like they have been for the last 10 years, shipping dogs in and out, day in and out. That's not going to happen ever again. And I'm still very confident that their days are numbered and they will be closed down. And I think the great thing about this also is it's now acting as a stepping stone. People are creating campaigns against other laboratories now, talking about it in a way that we haven't seen for a long time. So, well done to everyone that's got involved. Fantastic effort, incredible effort, amazing.
I think you're right. I mean, the person I think you referred to, the woman who stayed in a camper van, is that Polly? And there's Polly, and we heard a few of us heard John Curtin speak so passionately about it as well in Nottingham. And we were so moved by it. There's a few of us going down actually in a couple of weeks. I mean, hopefully, you kind of hope against hope that it'll all be over by then, but it won't. But I think you're right. There's a groundswell of opinion now, and people are so horrified with what happens. And these beagles are so sort of, they're so innocent. Look in the pictures which are coming out as well. Are just people are starting to understand and make the connection between the animals and their home as well.
I think something to think about here, right? Is we've met so many local people who live in the villages around where MBR is, who have come up, are now joining the protest, but have come up and said, we had no idea. They used to drive by there every day. And there it was, a dog factory in the Cambridgeshire countryside, and nobody knew. Apart from a few people that were going there regularly, and who could hear the dogs. But everybody else, if you drove by there a year ago, you would see a sign to the MBR acres, a gate, and that's it. Trees, and you would have no idea that just behind was a factory breeding dogs. But now everybody knows, and that's not going to change now.
No, it won't. I mean, it's when we do the slaughterhouse vigils. I mean, it's exactly the same. It's all totally sanitized, steel gates, no signage or anything. People just think it's just sort of described as a food factory, and we have the big banner saying it's a slaughterhouse. And this is in the middle of the Northumberland countryside. You have people going for dog walks, and they're kind of absolutely horrified that this is going on, in such a beautiful area. But it's exactly that these animal abusers are actually hiding away. Now, we know that obviously at the moment, obviously these beagles have now been taken to a lab, and I know this is kind of this is a very sad and awful thing to ask, but can you sort of, for people who are watching this and who don't understand what vivisection is, could you maybe sort of describe what's actually happening to these beagles now they've been taken away to the labs?
Yeah, the beagles from MBR will be primarily they'll have been sold, because MBR is a business. MBR acres are a business, American-owned company, and they are a business who sell dogs to laboratories. So these dogs will have typically gone to contract testing labs like LabCorp, formerly Covance, or formerly HLS, Sequani, and others. And typically they'll be used in toxicity research. Now these dogs, that means that these dogs will be given a test substance, pharmaceutical product or other chemical, either by a tube being put down their throats directly into their stomach, or to be injected directly into their blood system. And this can last for up to 90 days with no pain relief. And they will literally slowly be poisoned to death. And after that period, they will be killed and their organs will be removed. And then they'll be discarded like rubbish. And that is typically what will happen to these beagle dogs. Remember, they're only about 16 weeks old when they leave MBR. And you can go online, you can see lots of undercover footage from laboratories around Europe and elsewhere about what happens to these beagle dogs. But make no mistake about it, their life will be miserable, and it will be painful, and they will die and they will suffer. And the worst thing about it is that we now get in an increasingly strong body of scientific opinion that says these experiments are not even scientifically necessary. It's not even like everybody knows already they're horrifically cruel and they cause immense suffering, but the science behind it now is deeply questioned, and I think that's something that should horrify everyone. Dogs are not people, rats and mice are not people, monkeys are not people. The results that the results of these tests are not directly applicable to human beings. We do live in an advanced technological society. We have the ability to do research to find toxicity levels in other ways without using dogs or any other animals live in test tubes. And that's the insanity about this.
I mean, you've kind of one of the next things I was going to say was, when we talk to people about vivisection, people will accept that vivisection is cruel, but the comments are, if it was my baby, I'd rather my baby, my dad, my son, my husband, I would rather that it was tested on animals rather than on a human, rather than on them. And we say, well, although we know that animals have the same sentience as humans, they don't have the same body structures and they don't have the same organs, and they do react to things in different ways. So would you say that's a fair response? Or how would you would there be anything else you would add to that?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about using animals as surrogate humans, so that means you try to recreate a disease or pathology in an animal. And that the word here is recreate. So when you talk about things like trying to create brain disorders in primates, for instance, and famously, I was involved in the Oxford campaign, and one of the things that the researchers was doing there was researching the Parkinson's disease. And basically, they were brain damaging macaque monkeys, but they didn't even call it Parkinson's disease. They called it Parkinsonian type. So even they admitted that what they were recreating in the monkeys wasn't Parkinson's disease you find in people. And this, you find this repeated throughout animal research. So we know that, cancer research, for instance, I can't remember the person's name now, but it wasn't very long ago that a very famous cancer researcher said, well, we can cure cancer in mice, but it doesn't extrapolate to human beings. So animals are dangerous. They mislead. 9 out of 10 drugs fail in human clinical trials after passing animal trials. So we already know that, and there's the important thing, if you're going to science, if it's going to be taken seriously, and science is a useful thing, we're not anti-science, it's a useful thing. But certainly in terms of animal research, it has to be a very, very good predictor of outcomes in humans. I mean, prediction is important here. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it. And even by their own admission, it's a poor predictor. So why are we still persisting on this? It's quite clearly madness to use something that by your own admission is a poor predictor for outcomes. And when you look at the technologies that are available and increasingly available, you do wonder, what's going on here. And I think there's we certainly found it doing the campaign in Oxford that, and I've spoken to a lot of animal researchers in my time, in my sort of 16 years that the campaign was running, that there's a deep conservatism. They don't like being told that they're doing something wrong. Well, we've always done this, and we'll always do it that way. And the other argument they always, and it's probably their most fundamental argument, is that they will say that well, a computer can't predict everything. A computer isn't a human, isn't a human being or whatever. Well, it isn't, but if you look at all the techniques that are available, and if they were used in a way that it was more holistic and they were joined up, so you have microdosing, you have microfluid chips, you have human cell lines, you have all kinds of things now. Now, for me, I have no doubt that if they were told tomorrow, you've got to stop experimenting on animals by next Friday, I think you would find pretty quickly that these technologies would come to the fore very quickly. So it's like you're dealing with such a historic reluctance for people, especially in the scientific community, to change. But I see signs, some hopeful signs that is starting to happen. Morally, obviously, the argument's been won a long time. Animals suffer greatly in laboratories. If they don't, why do you have a licensing system that that allows you to cause certain levels of suffering? It's ridiculous to argue otherwise. But the harm to human patients is real as well from misleading results, and that has to be also considered seriously. I mean, I know at the moment there's this EDM 175 calling for an independent evaluation by independent scientists of the effectiveness of animal research. And I hope that happens. I really hope that happens very quickly. I think animal research has been, I think one of the reasons animal research got pushed out the animal rights movement is because, unlike telling someone to go vegan, which is really easy, and it's a no-brainer, when you argue with members of the public about, I don't think you should be experimenting on mice, rats or dogs, you're dealing with a different order of argument, because like you said yourself, sometimes the response will be, well, what if my child gets cancer? What if my child gets, and that's far more, it can be more challenging, but it's an argument you can win, and you can win it very well. But I've always felt that a lot of people in our movement shied away from it because they felt it was too difficult. But I think hopefully that's changing, and I think that's one of the great things about the MBR Beagles campaign and Camp Beagle is that these questions have been talked about again, thankfully, and that kind of debate's happening at last.
I mean, it's been talked about, multiple times a day, even in our group, so this has been replicated across the country. There is a massive load of attention on it from both sides, from the animal rights side and from the animal abusing side. So it can only be a good thing, and we need to just obviously keep the momentum going. So we're talking about some of the things you've done. I mean, you mentioned there you've been incarcerated, you've been assaulted numerous times. You must see some horrendous things. So how do you look after your own mental health and your well-being, your physical health? I mean, obviously, but your mental health, because you must sort of have some horrendous, dreams and nightmares and stuff,
Yeah, how do I look on my mental health? Some people say I don't. Do you know what? My view is really quite straightforward and probably very uncomplicated. It's who I am. I just become very bloody minded about it. I think after you could become, and I've seen it happen to other people. I've seen people get burnt out. I've seen people just not being able to cope with it anymore. I've even known people in the past who've committed suicide. Horrific. And I can understand why. I totally understand why some people get consumed by it and can't take any more. It's vast. The whole world of animal suffering is vast. And if you think about it like that, you potentially probably are not going to survive. I would say that one thing in terms of being an activist and it's why I go sabbing still as well, is that you can, with sabbing, it does offer you the opportunity to go out and save a life and see it happening. So you can see a result. You don't see that often dealing with other issues. And also you learn teamwork, and you learn real dependence, or not dependence, but you learn to work with other people on a very real level because you really need them. But in terms of like going back to what you actually asked, my mental health, I've actually got quite a dark sense of humour, I suppose, as well, getting darker as I get older. Occasionally I have a drink to help, but I would generally say that the thing that keeps me going is I'm really inspired by the animal rights movement. I always was, despite its ups and downs, despite the frustrations and the arguments, and well, you all know what I'm on about.
Yeah.
But I've always been greatly inspired by the idea that a group of people could come together and fight for non-humans, for animals. I always blew my mind that, and it actually still does. And that always gives me hope, because I think, well, as long as people are willing to stand up for those who can't speak for themselves, then there's hope for everything.
Yeah.
There really is. And that's what I think keeps me going. It's what keeps me sane, I suppose. I don't meditate. I'm not a spiritual person. I don't believe in anything like any religious beliefs. I don't have any spiritual beliefs. I see things as they are in many ways, but I do have this absolute respect, admiration, I suppose love for the animal rights movement and for what it has achieved. And I think that's what keeps me going, is that ultimately people who have that will in the end win out. They have to.
Honestly, that sounds so, it sounds so sort of, I mean, I'm a very positive person, but in terms of, I kind of like look back and see where we've been and what we're actually doing now, and the fact that veganism is itself is actually mainstream, the fact that we've got this this big spotlight on vivisection at the moment, and obviously, so I'm kind of like thinking that it is a good way to kind of just keep going, and having good people around you as well. I mean, it is really, really important, because you do have to trust each other. When we are doing demos or protests, I mean, we're much more an educational group, but we do support other groups as well. So, some of the Hunt Watch I mentioned, and the Saves, and other things as well. You do have to trust the people who are around you, and it is inspiring to see all the different people, the different kind of backgrounds they have. That we're not the great unwashed, jobless, unclean sort of. We have a variety of professional jobs, and, loads of backgrounds.
Talking of that, just a quick anecdote. I was at Camp Bigwell yesterday, and I stood outside, and I met a doctor. She was a GP. She's a GP, and she was outside with her placard, and we spent a lot of time talking. And again, like, she was telling me that she now has she's now got a little core group of other doctors she communicates with, and they talk about she's vegan. She promotes that with her patients. But she's also now promoting this, this little group of health professionals who are talking about animal research as well, and what they can do about it. Now, to me, that's like some of the greatest thing I could hear. It's like, so our movement, she has been influenced by the animal rights movement. A doctor. I mean, how good does it get? It's massively important.
It is.
So it's things like that, that just make you realise, what, we are getting this right. I know it's hard. It's days like today with the dogs going out are just bloody awful. And there's no way you can not feel utterly gutted by it. But I think that you've got to hang on to something. You've got to believe that something is happening. And when you meet people like that, you think, actually, it is possible. It is possible. It is possible. As crazy, as crazy as the idea must have seemed originally, that people talking about rights for non-humans, rights for animals. But I think, no, it's not crazy. It's not crazy at all. And in fact, all the evidence about the way animals think and feel, their emotional states, the scientific evidence about animals backs the animal rights position, not the other way around. And I think we need to remember that, it backs us. It does. And we're going to do it.
We are.
We are going to do it.
With people like you, we are. So what's
people like all of us. It's people like all of us. Everyone in the grassroots animal rights movement is as valuable as the next person. That's why we'll do it.
So what's next for you then?
I'm going to the Home Office tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I'm going out sabbing Saturday with some strapping around my ribs.
Right. Yeah.
So, and then I'll be back to MBR as well. So,
yeah.
Yeah,
So
Home Office tomorrow to let them know about the beagles again.
Yeah.
And then it's basically keep going.
Yeah. So this is the Home Office, and is it St James Place next to yeah. So what time is that going on?
Starts at midday.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So obviously that's where Priti Patel based herself, isn't she? So because I know she.
And the other reason for being there is that the Home Office license establishments like MBR, they license the laboratories where those dogs go, and they also license the animal researchers who will experiment on them dogs.
Yeah.
So it is a place that we have to go to.
Yeah.
We have to let them know.
Yeah.
And particularly Priti Patel.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's all my questions for you today. So thank you very much. It's been absolutely fascinating talking to you. I'm absolutely inspired by what you're doing, and and all the stuff you've done as well. It's just absolutely amazing. So I'm going to just sort of sign off now. So this is Anna Amelia from Northeast Animal Rights saying thank you very much and best of luck to Mel Broughton with his, continued success with everything you're doing. It's absolutely amazing. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us today, and goodbye for now.
Thank you very much for inviting me on. It's been a real privilege. Thank you.
You're very welcome.